It was only a little bit less than 4 weeks ago that I made a video talking about why Iowa cannot beat a ranked team. It was only less than 3 weeks ago that I made an Iowa-Wisconsin preview as the Hawkeyes were 3-2 after their bye week with the terrible Wisconsin Badgers on the road, Penn State at home, and Minnesota at home. Now, not only did Iowa win all 3 games, Iowa dominated the Wisconsin Badgers. They dismantled the Wisconsin Badgers. Then they won a close one against a James Franklin-less Penn State team. They did not rip the helmets off of Penn State, but they moved them out of the way and got the win. But what they did to the Minnesota Golden Gophers Saturday afternoon was something that I had not seen out of an Iowa team in a while. Not only did they put 41 points on a pretty good Minnesota team coming in with a 5-1, 3-1 record in the Big Ten, they absolutely dismantled the Gophers' helmet and threw them out of Kinnick Stadium, up past the Twin Cities, into the country of Canada. This is Landon Talks About the Hawks. Let's get into today's video. Landon Renk Reacts. Is Iowa's season back alive?
Touchdown, Iowa! Down the sideline, goodbye! Touchdown, Iowa! For the end zone, but he will win! Touchdown, Iowa!
Thanks for clicking on today's video. If you would like Iowa Hawkeyes content or any college football content or Broncos content, make sure to drop a like and subscribe down in the comments and comment down below what you think Iowa's season predict and end of the record is. But I got to be honest with you, this is a raw cut. I'm filming this today on Sunday after my Broncos and my Hawkeyes are both 6-2, and this is about as high as I've ever felt about both the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Denver Broncos in probably both teams 10 years. Both teams 10 years, I'm going to be honest. I mean, 10 years ago, Iowa went undefeated. Broncos won the Super Bowl 10 years ago. So this is probably the highest I've felt in 10 years, and it feels really good, honestly. I was 5 back in 2015, so I don't remember much. But as Iowa fans, this is probably the best I've felt since 2015. I have not seen a team have such a complete game in such a long time, because there's always something, and we've seen it this year, there's always something you got to nitpick out of each game. You know, you look at earlier this year with, a big win against Wisconsin, but Mark Gronowski was hurt, and he was coming back from injury, and the offense didn't look too good, and the defense was really good in that game, and the special teams were good. And then you look at a win like the UMass game, where the special teams struggled, and the offense was really good, and the defense was really good. And you just look all around, every game has been nothing perfect. No, nothing's ever perfect. But the way Iowa beat Minnesota this last week, just amazing. Just amazing. And it was great to see the Hawkeyes, because I was a little bit nervous. I thought this was going to be a trap game. I mean, they were hyping up Minnesota, this 5-2 Gophers team that had just beat a ranked Nebraska team the week before, and I knew they played Ohio State fairly well. I mean, Ohio State's a tough team to play. But man, this feels like a new spot in Iowa football history, because, Iowa fans will claim, 6-2, we've been here before. This kind of feels like after that Penn State win back in 2021, and you're 6-2, you're 6-0, and then you lose 2 straight. But for me, this feels like a new opportunity, because it's not like Iowa's playing with everything in front of them. Iowa has got to win every single game to even get in contention of making the playoffs. Back in that 2021 season, Iowa should have gone undefeated. They should have gone 12-0. It wasn't like they were playing with backs to the wall. They just kind of fumbled their season out of a good start, and this time Iowa's making their way out of a fumbled start. I mean, Iowa lost 2 games in September. In the month of September, by October 1st, Iowa was 3-2 heading into that bye week, 1-1 in the conference. And I did expect Iowa was going to go 3-0. I predicted that they were going to beat Penn State, but I did not predict they were going to beat Oregon. But I did think that Iowa was going to go 3-0 after that Indiana stretch, and I'm happy that we got to 6-2. My expectation was that Iowa would be here at 6-2, but I did not think Iowa would not be in this big of a position. And, I see Iowa fans out there saying, hey, why aren't we ranked? We were the last team out of the coaches poll, so essentially we're 26th in the coaches poll, and we're like 29th, 30th in the AP poll. And obviously we'll have a bye week this week. Praying for some teams to lose. Maybe we can get Michigan or someone like that to lose. I don't know if they're playing this week, but get some of those lower teams to lose. Maybe we could sneak into that 25-24 spot, setting up that game against Oregon. We're going to learn the kick time for that. We're going to be previewing this, because this is the biggest game in Iowa football in the last 10 years late in the season, right? This is probably the biggest game. We're not talking Big Ten West crap. This is probably the biggest game since that Minnesota home game in 2015, which kind of reminded me of today's blackout win where the Hawkeyes come out and just play amazing and Kennick is booming. And Iowa kind of that's when they kind of got themselves in a better college football position spot. Now, obviously, they did not make the CFP that year, but man, does this season kind of remind me a little bit of 2015. But the difference between 2015 and now is that Iowa has already played 2 ranked teams, and Oregon is going to be ranked. They're going to be maybe even in the top 5. Right now, they're at 6. We'll see where they go next week. But I'm excited to see this game. And you saw Oregon play a Wisconsin team that we beat 37-0 on the road. Oregon played them at home and only beat them 21-7. What's going to happen when you're going to come into Kennick Stadium? And, we can't do these what ifs because blank, 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 right? But I'm just going to point this out right now. Oregon had Indiana home. Iowa had Indiana home. Oregon lost to Indiana by 10. Iowa lost to Indiana by 5. Basically 7, right? That intentional safety. But you see that Iowa played Indiana better than Oregon did. Both teams played them at home. Both teams, Iowa didn't have their starting quarterback for half of the last quarter. So I really think Iowa has a serious shot, and I think Iowa has a better shot at beating Oregon than they did at Indiana. I think this game's going to be closer. I think there's not going to be, I think it's going to be higher scoring, but I think this Iowa defense is also at a point where it's insane to see. This is what everybody has wanted to see out of Iowa. And that's what no one is recognizing, is that I've seen podcasts for years and years and years and years. It says, what if Iowa has an offense? What if Iowa finally scores points? Minnesota scored 3 points against Iowa on Saturday. Minnesota scored 3 points against Iowa a ton of times. Normally, the final score would be Minnesota 3, Iowa 17. We've seen it so many times. Minnesota 3, Iowa 10. Minnesota 3, Iowa 20. But no, instead, it's Minnesota 3, Iowa 41. And that is because the Iowa offense is finally just competent. Iowa offense is not insane. We saw a 29-yard passing touchdown, Mark Gronowski rushing touchdown, Hecklinski rushing touchdown, Weegen punt return, and a pick 6. Those were Iowa's touchdowns and 2 field goals. That's not that insane scoring-wise. But my point that I'm making is Iowa finally is a competent offense. We've seen the Hawkeyes defense only allow 3 points in games. But Iowa's offense puts up 17, 20 points. But now they're putting up 40 points. And we've seen this last year. We saw it last year and we got the first taste. Tim Lester's first game, he puts up 40 against an Illinois State team that obviously wasn't very good. Iowa put up 40 4 times last year. This year, the Hawkeyes, they're more of a 30s lower team. I think they're averaging 31 points per game. But what they have done in conference play is really, really, really impressive. 38. Obviously, that Indiana game was lower scoring. 37, 25, and now 41. And I expect the Oregon game to be a lot higher scoring. I could see it being kind of like the Penn State game, like in the upper 20s. I wouldn't really give it the 30s because both teams have a really good defense. But man, am I excited. And I've heard a lot of people say, like, is this a good time for a bye week? And I think it is. I think it is. Both teams have a bye week because what I see is I see Iowa getting 2 weeks to prepare, to rest up Gronowski. I know we're playing really hot right now, and it feels good to be in that rhythm. And sometimes when you take a bye week, but at least both teams are going into a bye week. If Oregon would have had a bye week this week and would have played next week and then played Iowa, maybe, it could have seemed like an advantage. But both teams are on a bye week. Both teams are going to come out. And that's why I don't expect the Iowa-Oregon game to be a fireworks show the first quarter. I expect it to be kind of more like the Indiana game. But what I saw out of Iowa against Minnesota, and these are just kind of some of my final thoughts as we get through this video, is that first drive when they scored a touchdown, Iowa loves to receive the ball. They've received the ball in every single game this year. How can we go down and get points on our first drive? No interception, or at least get ourselves in the field position game to score on the second drive. Iowa has to do one of those things if they're going to beat Oregon. They cannot throw another pick. They cannot go 3 and out. They have to score a field goal, score a touchdown, or pin in Oregon deep. And that field position game is going to be massive. That's why I look at Iowa's first defensive drive. If Iowa starts with the ball, if Iowa is on defense first, is getting themselves in a position where they can win the field position battle, pin that Oregon team in a position where in the fourth quarter they're going to be back against that Kennick north end zone, where they're going to have their backs to that north end zone. They're going to be hearing that crowd and trying to go towards our south end zone. That is always really helpful. I love when Iowa does that because it allows that drive to start closer towards that north end zone, not going into the north end zone. So that's what Iowa likes to do. They like to pin these teams. Kirk Ferentz is a genius, but this is Kirk Ferentz's real masterpiece chance. Iowa, Oregon, we're going to get a kickoff time tomorrow, November 8th in 2 weeks. I'm excited. I'm feeling super good about the Hawkeyes. I don't want to give Iowa, say I think Iowa's going to win yet, but I'm really excited to keep previewing it. I promise we're going to start making more content. We're going to go over a lot of stuff, but man, this is such a great feeling as an Iowa fan. I haven't felt this way ever in my life as a Hawkeye fan. It feels like the Hawkeyes are a good team. It feels like the Hawkeyes are a true top 25 team offensively, defensively, and special team-wise. And it feels amazing. And Mark Gronowski, thank you for coming to Iowa. We'll see you next time. Go Hawks, go Broncos. What a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed today's video.